Thank you so much for being here on the hour. Every hour we'll have a little variety show of classes. This is a nice flow. If you're in the first session, talking about eating seasonally, this just fits right into it. And if not, you're just going to get so much value for being here. So Brittany Zeer, you might recognize her from the shop staff floor. Amazing. She runs a business called Blissful Womb Care, and this is one of her specialties. So she's about to share some of her secrets. She crafts bone broths for clients. Absolutely delicious, super nourishing. Share some of her secrets. And then Vivian Safaris, you might also recognize. She's done some classes here before, and she's going to add her wisdom as they talk about herbal bone broths, what you can do to support yourself, any phase of life, and of course this time of year as well. So thank you so much. What you take it away.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. All right, so as Matt said, we're here to talk about crafting a nourishing herbal bone broth, and we wanted to do that together because Brittany and I are always, first of all, we always have a jar of broth with us at work here that we're sipping on, and we're always talking about this idea of adding herbs to kind of supercharge our broth. And how healing and wonderful they are. So we really deeply believe in the healing broth. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So Brittany's, I'll let you speak to what you do with Blissful Womb Care. I'm here with my products, Apotheki. These are herbs and teas that I import from my family village on Mount Olympus in Greece. They're all well-crafted or organically grown, and all have a nutritional or medicinal benefit as well. And Blissful Womb Care is?
Yeah, so I'm Brittany. I'm the creator of Blissful Womb Care. My primary work is centered around supporting and nourishing mothers through the postpartum time. And so if you were here for Luca's class previously, that also really aligns with a lot of my work too. I teach on the practice of cycle awareness. So understanding how to live in alignment with your cycles, but specifically around postpartum care, really can be seen as kind of like the season of winter that women go through in the postpartum time too. So a lot of what Luca was speaking about and what we're going to speak about in here too is really centered around how to really nourish the body from a place of warming, dense nourishment, how to add back in nutrients and minerals to support your life. And so I support women in the postpartum time. I also have a delivery nourishment care package where I make broths and soups and nourishing snacks and deliver those to moms in the community as well as a bunch of other things. But yeah, why don't we just dive right into
Sounds good.
what we're here for?
Yeah, so I guess you can start with
Sure.
like what is bone broth, and I'll preface that with we try to sit down and find a definition of the difference between broth and stock that was like official, but there's so many different opinions, but we'll define it how we want today.
Yeah. So I wrote down, what is bone broth? It is a simmering stock pot of deliciousness. That's how I see bone broth. And there's so many different ways and variations. And we'll talk about different ways that you can do it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But basically, it's a stock pot of roasted bones. You can throw in vegetable scraps and herbs and a bunch of other things to create this beautiful, delicious stock pot of nutrient-dense deliciousness. How many times can I say deliciousness? Yeah. So what is the difference between like a bone broth and a meat stock? So Luca kind of spoke a little bit to bone broth and meat stock, and I just quickly asked her how she does meat stock too. Sometimes raw meat on the bone, sometimes roasted meat on the bone, but meat stock is traditionally like a shorter brew, like 4 to 6 hours. Is that generally how you do yours? Yeah. And then a bone broth typically is like 12, 24, 48 hours. So a lot of a longer simmer in that. And Vivian and I each have our own ways of doing that too. So that's kind of our definition of anything to add on that.
Yeah, I just add that like if you come across a recipe or like they both can be used interchangeably. Both are of course deeply nourishing, and most importantly, both are staples in traditional diets of every culture. And that's something that I think is a good baseline if you're confused about what to eat and what to include in your diet. Just if it was traditional for someone, for you, amazing, but traditional in any culture, there's a reason why it's endured, and that's something that I think you could safely incorporate into any diet. And both are vehicles for medicinal herbs as well. Oh, thanks, Brittany.
Yeah, we'll try this down.
Yeah. So did you want to speak to some of the health benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the benefits of let me just look at my notes here so I can stay on point. So bone broth is full of electrolytes and minerals. So some of the minerals in a bone broth are calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, silica, and all of these are essential for bone and joint health, for connective tissue, for your teeth, deeply nourishing and remineralizing from the inside out. What are some of the other benefits that we're going to talk about? So bone broth is also full of collagen and gelatin. So gelatin acts as a digestive aid, especially for intestinal disorders. It allows the body to utilize the complete proteins that you're ingesting as well. Collagen is supportive for the connective tissues, for the bones. And glycine is another component that comes from bone broth. It stimulates the production of stomach acid. So it's actually a natural antacid when you're drinking a bone broth as well. And glutamine is an amino acid that is found in bone broth. And that is a natural remedy for a leaky gut. So if anyone here has leaky gut syndrome or digestive problems or all of those kinds of sensitivities, what it does is it helps to repair those holes that are in your gut, in your intestinal lining. And I'll just say from firsthand experience, I wasn't able to have lactose and gluten for a really long time. I spent half of my life on pharmaceuticals and birth control and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And so I had a whole bunch of digestive discomfort. And when I came off of all of that and I started integrating bone broth primarily, I healed my gut, and now I have almost no digestive discomfort with anything as well. So that's just a little bit of a benefit from my personal experience. And it also supports your immune function. It boosts your immune system. We'll talk about how that works with lots of these different ingredients here. But yeah, do you want to speak to the respiratory aspect of it?
Yeah, well, all of it. Like when you mentioned the immune support, I think the point that I think is most important, and the respiratory support, is that it's not just like an old wives' tale. There's actually, I don't know what the studies are, but I know they exist. There's science behind why this is such a healing tradition that is passed on and from grandmothers to mothers, and why it endures. So on the immune support, gut health, of course, supports your immunity, reduces inflammation, and yeah, then it's not only good for preventing cold and flu, but also for like comforting while you are sick, and also helping to shorten the duration of those times. So all of those benefits, many, many more, make a bone broth or a meat stock a perfect vehicle, and yet another vehicle for practicing what I like to call kitchen herbalism. I think it's like really weighty to say like to claim you're an herbalist or like even a folk herbalist, but I love to say I practice kitchen herbalism. Because it's so easy, it's so accessible to anyone, really. And broth in particular is one of two of the simplest and oldest and most effective methods of practicing herbalism. So I guess I would ask, does anybody have any idea of like what the other very simple, easy, and effective method of practicing herbalism is? You know, tea. Yeah. Or you can be super fancy and say, water extraction. Yeah, basically anytime you're making a cup of tea or you're making a broth, you are using water to extract all of the water soluble properties in an herb. And it's so easy, and we all do it. And I kind of wanted to speak to, like, you've all been in the shop. You've all seen all of the amazing extracts and powders that we have, and there's definitely a place for that. They're convenient, they're more concentrated, there's easy to take. We probably both take like mushroom extracts every day. I don't brew chaga for 60 minutes every day. I wish I had the time to do that. Maybe I'll do it once every couple weeks. So yeah, a little extracted chaga in my coffee is easy, and there's definitely a place for that. But there's also that the kind of journey that maybe most of you have started or are just starting, where you start with like maybe your like celestial seasonings tea bag, and then maybe you graduate to like yogi tea, and the herbs are like very confined and safe in their little tea bag, and you never know what it actually looks like. And then you take the big leap into loose herbs that you find in nice packages on the shelves outside. And then maybe you start to go to like, oh, this is what it looks like before it's ground into a nice, easy to use, like loose tea. And then maybe the next step is you go out and forage and gather your own herbs for tea. So there's like a place for everything along the way. And the most important thing is, of course, that the herbs only work if you use them. Yeah. And the other part of that is that, sometimes with our families, like you and I are here 4 or 5 days a week, and we take everything. We have access to everything. It's a pretty sweet deal to, be at work and be able to take whatever you want. But then I realized I'm going home, and I'm not always bringing this stuff home, and we're taking these like delicious and medicinal herbs day in, day out, and maybe our families are maybe missing out. So that's where the broth is like an excellent way to kind of add it into your, like another vehicle to cycle it into your home routine. Yeah, so I guess we can dive into, we won't go too much more into like broth. I think Lucas probably is the other lover of broth that has explained it pretty thoroughly. But what we'll talk about is like what we like to add, how we incorporate herbs into a basic stock broth, which would be, meat, bones, veggies, scraps, aromatics, garlic, onion, that kind of thing. So I'm gonna go through my
and also
my winter broth.
Yeah.
So I'm not very creative. I have like a winter broth that works, and I stick with it and make it once a week at least, and use it up once a week. You're gonna taste mine and Brittany's, but we have to warn everyone. Brittany's is like a complete tasty. It's like a complete soup. Mine is more of a foundation, and I usually from there season it.
So do you want to talk about how you craft yours?
Yes,
and
I will.
Talk about how I do mine?
Totally. Okay, so the one that we're going to try today is a beef bone broth. I usually use knuckles if I can get them, but any beef bones work. Yeah, so I've made it all sorts of ways. Emily, who's out front in the Elixir Bar, I've seen her make broths with like 1 knuckle and 1 onion, and it's still delicious. But I usually do like a pound-ish of bones and into a standard crock pot. It'd be probably 4 liters. Yeah, 10 cups. Yeah. So where I've been buying them most recently is from Gemstone Beef. It's super affordable. That's another piece of that kitchen herbalism aspect. Like a pound of bones is like $8-9, and it gives you, 12 cups of broth. And you can certainly buy broth if you don't care to make it.
Before I pour this, I just wanted to show everyone the beautiful color of this really rich beef broth that Vivian made for us. Yes.
And yeah, like a little quart of pre-made bone broth is probably going to be like $20 if it's like grass-fed beef, which is great if you are in a pinch and need it. But yeah, about $8 to $9 for a pack of knuckles or tendons. So I start with the bone broth, with the beef bones. I roast them, add any veggie scraps. And then my winter favorites are, right now, I'll start with actually bay leaf because I just adore bay leaf. I think like a lot of us have had conversations about bay leaf, and I think it's so underrated. You often see recipes with like one bay leaf, and I'm always like, why? Like, why just one? And the reason that it's just one is because this is probably what a lot of people have in their.
So I'm going to pass this around. Vivian just blew my mind this week when we started having this conversation around bay leaves, because this is what I was using, just like standard store-bought bay leaves. And then I got some of her bay leaves, and I'm just going to pass this around. I want you guys to smell the difference and look at the difference so that you can see.
So you want your bay leaves to be fresh, and most of us have, bay leaves in our kitchen for years because we use one for a pot of soup. But what most people don't know is that it's a pretty powerful herb. They're super high in antioxidants. They're actually very mineral rich. They have, I know there's like oregano here, and you probably all know the basics of like what oregano does for you. But bay leaf has a lot of the similar qualities. It has antiviral qualities, antibacterial qualities. It's very immune supportive. What I think is most fascinating is that the aromatics in bay leaf, or the properties that contribute to the aromatics, are very analgesic and anti-inflammatory, so pain relieving. So it's amazing for joint pain, joint health. I've actually been making just a stock pot of a strong brew of bay leaf and put it in my bath water because it's very topical as well. You can certainly drink it as a tea. But for starters, when you see a recipe with one bay leaf, like I interpret that as like 5 or 6 to start. So in a broth, it's a no-brainer to include. It adds flavor, it adds aroma, but it also adds all these amazing nutritional benefits. So bay leaf is one of my favorite. On that analgesic, anti-inflammatory property, if you think about like what Brittany was talking about, the glucosamine and the chondroitin, collagen and gelatin that we know are really good for our joints, what a perfect combination to add to that to magnify those benefits. So bay leaf for sure. And Luca, I think you talked about the nettle. I love the nettle so much. This is a wild nettle. The stingers are still on the stem. It actually is still stingy dry. But nettle is an herb that, first of all, stands up to long brewing times. It's never going to get bitter. It just gets earthier and earthier. And that's what's giving us this deep, dark green color. So nettle, of course, nutrient dense, mineral dense. It's dense in minerals. It's a blood builder, so excellent for women at any cycle of their life. Yeah, it's high in iron, magnesium, calcium, silica. It's known to help with hormonal balance. It alleviates symptoms related to excess estrogen. And then it's a really excellent liver and kidney support. It's like a diuretic. Most herbs have some diuretic properties, but it helps to regulate the fluid flow between kidneys and liver. So in a liquid vehicle, nettle is an amazing addition. And also because like you can brew a cup of nettle tea in 20 minutes. I'll start mine in the morning and come home and strain it off at night, 8 hours later. So it's just another really easy way to get nettle, like a strong brew of nettle into your body. So that's one of my favorites. And then my all-time favorite, so on Mount Olympus, where my family's village is, where all these herbs come from, we're most well known for wild oregano. The area is really interesting terrain, really difficult growing conditions where the oregano is harvested. It almost seems to like grow out of rock, which, then those difficult growing conditions make for a really strong plant. Makes for it forces the plant to produce more of the compounds that give it its aromatics and its medicinal properties. So for oregano, that would be thymol, carvacrol, and you probably know of oil of oregano when you are sick. So oil of oregano is just an extraction from oregano. So why not start with the plant itself? And then if you do need to go to that deeply concentrated version, if you do get sick, then that's an amazing vehicle as well. But I love to include oregano. First of all, like in my culture, it's in almost every recipe. It's the flavor of Greek cooking. So it's more than just like pizza sauce. We also drink it as a tea when we're sick. But the branches specifically are an amazing addition to your broth. So I take about, 4 or 5 branches. First of all, they look beautiful, and we first eat with our eyes, and it feels like witchcraft when you have like, these big, beautiful branches, and I keep them in a bouquet on my counter and just like rip them off. It's just like feels like you're making something substantial and nourishing. But the aroma from this 24 hours later, all you will smell in your house is oregano. Like it's so strong, but like not in an overwhelming way. It gives, tons of flavor. So those are my picks. And then it's not traditional with these herbs, but I always add, and you'll speak to it, reishi and astragalus through the winter as well. So,
And
kelp, yeah. We didn't have any fronds. I usually like the big fronds because they're the same shape as the branches. But I also, because I don't eat I like seaweeds, but I don't incorporate them as much as I would like to. I use kelp, high in iodine, very mineral rich, and it adds a little bit of the salty flavor because I personally don't salt my broth until I use it. So
is there salt in this?
No,
just the iodine. Yeah. Nice little
Yeah.
flavor of the salt.
Yeah.
From that.
Yeah. Like I said, mine is not going to be beautifully spiced like yours. So yeah, that's my staple broth. Do you want to speak to yours?
Yeah. Before we go to mine, because I'm going to list off my ingredients. Do you want to list off your ingredients that you use and like your brewing process?
And we'll definitely actually have that we'll email that to everybody. Here. Yeah. Oh, where do I get them? From Mount Olympus in Greece. So it's a very small village, very remote, very clean. There's no major roads. It's like going 100 years back in time. And they're all hand harvested, and they all grow wild or without intervention. So yeah, amazing. Okay, so you said list off the herbs.
Yeah.
Beef bones, the standard veggie trio, like carrot, celery, onion, garlic, whatever I have kicking around. I usually keep a little bag of scraps that I will throw in from my freezer. Bay leaf, oregano, nettles, black peppercorns, and the kelp. And then reishi astragalus for me are my favorite.
Yeah. And you do yours like a 24-hour?
24 hours.
Pot?
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll talk about like how we incorporate that.
Perfect.
Strain it, and then I usually will use it through the week, but I try to freeze 1 jar for backup. Yeah, you can freeze it all for sure, or you can just keep it for a few days in the fridge. Yeah, so I roast them for about 20 minutes or until they're like nice and browned and bubbly on a higher heat, like 425-ish. And then once they're browned and bubbly, I just put them right into the crock pot, add everything, and spring water or yeah, just the bones.
Awesome. Any other questions for Vivian?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I do one batch of beef and one batch of like chicken or chicken feet, which Brittany is going to do a chicken one. And yeah, I've used pork bones, turkey bones, and lamb bones. Totally. Yeah, exactly. That's good. Possibly. Yeah, it depends. I don't know enough to tell you specifically, but yes, I know in some cases, like with I don't know if it's like hyper or hypothyroidism. Yeah, that you want to pay attention to how much iodine you're taking in. I don't know enough to answer that though. Yeah. Okay, I'll do the broth.
Cool. Sounds good. So Vivian's going to be serving out my broth. So one of my classic broths that I have crafted, I call it an immune boosting lemongrass ginger chicken broth. And so I get my bones from your local ranch, which is just 7 minutes outside of Airdrie. I live in Airdrie, and it's nice to go out there and support a local farm or anywhere at the farmer's market as well, as best as you can, if accessible to you, local and grass-fed or free-range bones. But if that's not accessible to you, even just like if you get a rotisserie chicken from Costco or the grocery store and you debone that, you can throw that in a stock pot as well. I also keep all of the bones from like chicken thighs or a roast chicken or anything like that in a bag in the freezer, so that I can throw that in as well. So nothing is going to waste. And so in my broth, I'm using just chicken backs, and I have roasted them again for about 20 to 30 minutes or so. And also included in there is the vegetable trio: carrots, onions, celery. I use fresh lemongrass. And one of the reasons why I use fresh lemongrass, little story time, I was in Bali in 2019 and I wound up super, super sick. And the retreat center that I was staying at served hands down the best chicken soup that I've ever had. And it had lemongrass in it. I've never been able to recreate it. But I love adding lemongrass in. So if you're using a fresh lemongrass, you need to pound it with the back of the knife to start to open it up so that the aromatics and the oils and the flavor can start to come out. Benefits of lemongrass are that they're antiviral, antimicrobial. What else have I written down here? Anti-inflammatory, and they're full of antioxidants. I also use fresh ginger. I use fresh ginger in a lot of my cooking and in a lot of my recipes. One, because I love the flavor of it, but two, it's really warming for the entire body and for the digestive system. So it's helping to break down or helping to warm up your digestive system so that your body can absorb the nutrients better. Anti-inflammatory, really good for nausea as well. What else do I have in there? I have some powdered turmeric in there. I like to use either a fresh or a dried turmeric, like turmeric pieces over powdered, because it's a little bit more concentrated. I just didn't have any right now. I use Vivian's bay leaves and her wild nettle in here, as well as reishi and astragalus and kombu and this Celtic salt, which I'll also talk about. So some benefits of reishi. So this is the wild reishi. Here we have a few different kinds of reishi that we sell in store here, from this wild reishi that is just harvested off of trees in Northern Ontario. This is it's called reishi 42. And so my understanding of reishi is that it absorbs the nutrients from which it's growing on. So this reishi 42 is grown on a substrate of 42 different herbs and plants and all of that sort of stuff. So you're getting a whole bunch of different compounds in the reishi 42, whereas the wild reishi is coming from the forest. So lots of different benefits from either option as well. Reishi does add a slight bitter taste to broth, especially if you're using the extract powder. I've used actually the reishi that's in this broth. Denis, who's doing the next class on foraging, his photographs from mushrooms and everything, he brought back some wild reishi from the coast and gifted it to me. So that's in this batch of broth today as well. So reishi is an immune booster. It is an adaptogen, so it helps your body in modulating to stress. It's really calming and grounding for the spirit. What else does reishi do? It's nourishing for your blood. It is protective for your liver and kidneys. And it is known as the mushroom of immortality. So in traditional Chinese medicine, yeah, question. Great. Yeah, great question on that. So the question was, which do I prefer, using the dried reishi or the extract powder? I have used both, and I prefer to use the dried over the extract. I found the extract, I used about half a teaspoon in an 8-liter stock pot, and it gave it a more bitter taste. I was able to taste more of the bitterness. Whereas when I use just the dried slices, I find that it kind of melds into the flavors a little bit better. Yeah, I put in about 6 to 10 slices of these small ones, or 3 or 4 of these larger ones. Yeah. So that's reishi. And then astragalus. Astragalus boosts and builds immunity. It is also warming and nourishing for the qi, and it's actually really great for someone who is postpartum or recovering from injury or illness, as it's helping to move the blood and build the blood. And it's anti-inflammatory, helps to regulate blood sugar, good for the lungs and the respiratory health as well. So, and astragalus has just kind of like a slight sweet taste. You don't notice a ton of flavor of the astragalus in there. And I'll use probably, again, about 10. I just kind of like grab a handful and throw it in. I don't usually measure things in that way. Yeah, you either, right? I have also put a little bit of kombu in my broth as well. So kombu is a seaweed. So it's high in iodine, lots of vitamins and minerals as well, vitamin B and C, potassium, manganese, copper. It's antiviral and also boosts immunity. And I have also added in, who here has heard of Celtic salt? Celtic sea salt, it's all the rage right now. So that's actually the brand. It's Breton French gray salt, and this is the one that we sell here in store. It comes from the same place and the same mineral compound components. So it's about 75 to 80 trace minerals. Also builds immunity. It has a bit of a different flavor than a Himalayan salt or a table salt. So it's a lot more nutrient rich for the Celtic salts in here as well. I think that was everything that I wanted to touch on. Oh, apple cider vinegar.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Mine too.
Apple cider vinegar. We throw apple cider vinegar in with the bones. That helps to draw the minerals and the nutrients out of the bones. So I do a splash, like a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. These are accurate measurements, guys. If you want a recipe.
Well, and that's the beauty of, like, you know, it's not like making, well, I was going to say making a tincture, but that can be very folky too.
Yeah.
Like I've never made the same broth twice, and I've never had one that was actually, I was going to say, I've never had one that didn't turn out, but last week I tried to do a lemon balm chicken broth, and it was gross. So that was not the right, that was not a great addition. But other than that, it always is a little different, and I think that's good because sometimes you need a little bit more of something or another.
Well, and when I was crafting my batch for my deliveries for my clients this week, I made 2 separate batches, and it was an herbal, like fresh herbs and roasted chicken broth. And the batch I made on Monday was different than the batch I made on Wednesday. And I'm trying to like finesse it and trying to make it kind of be the same. But then I also dropped in and I was like, well, maybe it's different because the people who I'm nourishing need something that's a little bit different with each batch as well. So yeah, there's no right or wrong way to make a bone broth. There's so many different variations, or a meat stock or anything like that. We just showcased here a few of the superfoods and really nutrient dense options that we use to craft our own. Yeah, so I do my broths. This one was done overnight. It was about 10 or 12 hours, but usually I'm only doing mine for like 4 to 6 hours. Yeah, I find the longer that it brews, it gets like more of a roasted caramelly flavor, and sometimes I like that and sometimes I don't. But as Luca was speaking about in the previous class as well, some people have histamine issues with the longer brewed broths, whereas in a meat stock or a shorter brewed that tends to be a little bit easier if you have digestive issues and histamine problems. Yeah.
For the chicken, is it only the bones or like, I know when I go and buy making a broth, it has meat on it, it
Yeah.
has the neck, and it has a part of the feet separate. You don't put the feet in the oven, do you?
So the question was about the bones and the feet. I'm just gonna speak to chicken feet real quickly. Chicken feet might seem like a little bit of a weird thing to throw in broth. I did a whole series on my Instagram page probably about 6 months ago with chicken feet, and I was naming them, and people thought it was hilarious. I was a little weirded out by it, but chicken feet are really rich in collagen. So if you want like more of like a gelatinous broth, then chicken feet is a good way to add that in. I roasted them first. They don't really roast well, and they don't have a ton of flavor to it. But as for the bones, I'm usually like, the chicken backs that I get, it has a little bit of meat on it, has a little bit of skin on it as well. And so I'm throwing all of that in with it.
So once the person is not roasted, do they need to be roasted, bone broth or?
I've heard different things. Like some people chalk it up to flavor. Some people say that the minerals are more available from roasting. So yeah, I'm the same. Like I with the feet, I love chicken feet. By the way, we talked about this so much. It's so gross to see them. They float up to the top of your pot.
They've got claws on them.
Yeah,
Like
if you ever want to freak your children out, like it's a visual, but I'm used to it now. Yeah, and I found from what I read, roasting is recommended to release the gelatin, or the collagen or that gelatinous texture, but I didn't feel a difference between them, and I didn't feel a difference in the flavor either. So I usually skip that step with feet. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I'll just add on to one more thing as well. Like when we're looking at the definition of like a meat stock versus a bone broth and roasting or not roasting or time or not time, it's really up to personal preference. And I have seen meat stocks are with roasted bones and just a low simmer, kind of like how I do it, like 4 to 6 hours, or the raw bones with the meat on for that short simmer as well. And then some people will define like a bone broth as like a 24-hour plus the longer simmer. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. And it's really about just crafting it however feels intuitive to you and throwing things in and adapting it as you go along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great question.
So I think that leads into like how do we incorporate this into our routine? And I had a fear of slow cookers. We talked about this too. But when I started making my own broth, I couldn't believe how easy it was. But so I like, for a bone broth, I like this to slow simmer in a slow cooker because I can leave it overnight. I can leave the house. I'm comfortable that it's fine. For shorter stock, I'll use a stock pot. I don't have a Instant Pot or a pressure cooker. I know sometimes the guys here will use a pressure cooker. And I know Instant Pot is supposed to shorten the whole thing to a couple hours. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I don't have one, so I can't speak to it, but I've heard that it's yeah. I mean, my intuition is that it would. I personally I always choose, I'm a really slow adapter to new things. I'll always choose the most traditional way to do it. And yeah, a slow cooker to me feels like it's giving it the time to draw everything. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, you can just really forget it. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And
So-
then you come home and it smells
And it's
amazing,
great.
right?
Yeah. So my rhythm is I usually start one after like a weekday bone broth. I'll start one after work, let it go all night, and then 5 o'clock the next day, come home, strain it off, and use it for recipes, whatever I'm incorporating it into.
So as the hours go by and the water's evaporating, you top up the water?
I don't.
I don't either.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. In the slow cooker, it won't evaporate. It won't concentrate too much, but in the stock pot, I think
Yeah, like
concentration.
this one that I did overnight. It evaporated probably about this much, and I have like a big 8-liter stock pot that I use, and I just do all of mine on the stovetop. So, and I had it on like really low overnight. I kept waking up in the night and smelling it, like my stomach was
I know.
rumbling and everything. I was like, oh,
I'm always
wow.
confused when I wake up in the morning and I'm expecting like the smell of coffee, and then I'm like, oh, oregano. But yeah, that's right. I'm making stock today. Like it really does. It's a really like comforting, welcoming scent. So yeah. And then in terms of use, like you could sip broth straight. When you make a lot of broth, you're really creative about how to use it up. I put it in almost everything, and the reason why is because you can actually see when someone is having a really nourishing broth for maybe the first time. You can actually, it's amazing to watch how they eat it. Like it's like a primal. We were talking about my mother-in-law who's older and had some nutritional deficiencies and health problems. So we've been cooking for her a lot, and so I made her this. I do make her this broth every week. Just watching her eat a soup that has the sauces, this kind of stock as a base, is like, it's like a primal thing. She's just slurping it up, and you can tell she's just feeling completely nourished. Same as kids sometimes. And she's always asking, what are you putting in this? What do you do differently? What are you putting? So we walk through the whole process. She's like, 24 hours, like, okay, like it, yeah. So very cool to see. And that's why I try to, I put it into everything. Anytime I cook grains, quinoa, rice, polenta, always as a base for soup, congee. What else do you say?
Yeah, that's usually how I do it as well.
Sauces,
I'll often start my day off before I have my coffee or before I have anything else, which I mean, not good to have coffee on an empty stomach anyways, but sometimes I do it, let's be real. That's okay. But just heating up a cup of bone broth and sipping on that first thing in the morning, I find is like such a really great way to start my day. It's giving my gut a nice warm hug, basically, is what it feels like. Yeah, we cook our rice in it as well, like 2 cups of broth to 1 cup of rice, like game changer. It is so delicious. It's so flavorful. I use it as the base for all of my soups. So when I'm doing my delivery nourishment care packages, I make a big stock pot of broth, and I'm doing 1 liter of broth, and then I use that broth as the base for the soup that I'm making. So for this broth, this lemongrass ginger broth, I generally will make like a roasted butternut squash with like warming spices, or carrot, ginger, coconut creamy soup, or something like that. Yeah, question. Oh,
yeah. I use filtered water for it. I actually bring water home from here for it. Yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, I bring the water from here. It's a filtration system that goes on your water tank, but I would use, if I had a Brita, that's what I would use. In a pinch, like I'll use tap water.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can almost, well, it's a smell, like you can almost smell the chlorination when you use it. I'm sure that cooks off. I'm sure, and it would be better to have broth with tap water than not have it at all. Yeah. But if you had the option.
Yeah. It's kind of the same as like organic versus conventional ingredients as well. Like work with what you have. If you have access to a filtered water, like I have a Santivia filtration system. My partner goes out skiing all the time, and he'll bring back spring water from Canmore as well. And so that's a really nice treat.
And we have our water fill station here for anyone.
Exactly. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to do it.
I was going to say, when you were talking, I consider broth the like slowest fast food out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
like the other night I came home late, I had broth ready, and I just like added rice noodles and a soft boiled egg and some greens wilted in it. And that was like fast food, but it was like so deeply nourishing. Yes, it took, a few days of prep, but when you have it there and ready, a meal can be put together in like, a matter of minutes. So, yeah.
And it's one of the most like nourishing vehicles, again, as we were talking about, one of the most nourishing vehicles to get so many of these different herbs and nutrients in that you wouldn't necessarily do otherwise. especially for someone who is working on gut healing or wound healing in any way, shape, or form. One anecdotal story right now, I have a new client who I'm supporting. Her daughter is 6 years old and has stage 4 cancer. So it's a sad situation. And she has an NG tube in, so they need to mix her powdered formula with something, and she's using my bone broth as the vehicle to get that into her. And so like that warms my heart in so many ways. But for the postpartum mothers that I'm supporting, or anyone who is sick or something like that as well, it's just one of the fastest and easiest ways to get dense, deep nourishment in. Yeah. Any questions? Are we done?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
well, just questions. Yeah.
And on the blood, and just you take it out, you stir it, and you take, you drain it out.
Yeah.
What do you do with the remnant?
Oh, I throw it out.
Yeah, I think it's pretty. It's when you see it, like there's pretty much you've taken everything that you can from it, so it feels fine to just throw it in the compost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes the bones even melt
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you know, like, if you make that one really good,
Mhm.
sometimes I buy like a big fish hat and
Mhm.
fish.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
another good
great
one too.
idea.
Yeah.
Fish head is what she
And,
was saying.
and
for those on-
deeply.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah.
great. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could. I
Yeah.
mean, depends on how long you're simmering it. So, yeah, more would offer more flavor, but there's lots of good nutrients in fish heads. That yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
I've heard that like in the bones, sometimes they house lead. Have you ever heard so that like you put something to
Oh, into the broth? Yeah, I've never heard that.
I haven't
could-
heard that. I think again, it would come down to sourcing, right? Like where are the bones coming from? It might be like more from conventional meats versus like grass-fed and local. I don't think that they would be getting a lot of lead in that way, but I haven't heard that.
And on
Yeah.
that, like I think bones they're one of the things that are affordable enough to if you have access to getting it grass-fed and organic, then yeah, they're under $10.
Well,
They're
yeah,
super
the
good.
ones that I get from your local ranch outside of Airdrie, it's like a frozen bag of 2 chicken backs, and it's like $2.
Oh,
Like
that's
it's like, yeah, it's super cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, really affordable. Yeah.
It's up in the place.
Yeah, it's called your local ranch. It's just outside of Airdrie. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I usually just get it from the grocery store. Yeah. Yeah. Lemongrass. Yeah, where do I get
I
my
think that's the
lemongrass?
only thing we talked about that we don't offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Pretty resourceful.
Fairly Blue Mountain, Biodynamic Farms carries
Oh,
it.
okay.
Oh, do they?
That's what
Okay.
Lucas was telling me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll check that out. Pardon me? Blue Mountain Biodynamic Farms. I believe they're Carstairs, right?
Carstairs, you can order, they're kind of like online. Market, you order Friday, Saturday, and they'll give you one.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's gonna be on your paper, right?
No, I just.
Yeah.
You put it in the box, to store and put it in the.
Yeah, that's actually a really great thing. Thanks for bringing that up. One final thing, I keep all of mine in jars and I freeze it in the jar as well. But if you are freezing your broth in a jar, fill it up to only about here. So leave about an inch space from the top. It needs to cool completely overnight in the fridge first. And then when you put it in the freezer, loosen the lid. Otherwise the jar can crack and it'll ruin your broth. So that's how I do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. I say like 5 days. Yeah. You might get 7 days out of it, but I usually we go through it so fast. Yeah.
All right. Right
you.
on. What a great session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For anyone who's interested, I have postcards here with some of my offerings on them, as well as the delivery nourishment care package. And if you have any questions, we're hanging around.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, feel free to take questions. Let's do a quick transition. If you want to learn what this is all about, Denise got his medicinal mushroom adventures, a photographic journey. He'll be talking about his recent trip to Cortez Island, mushroom harvesting. So epic time he had, and we'll be sharing all the goodies. So we'll get started on that one in just a couple minutes.